I thought it was my wife crawling into bed. That was the first lie I told myself that night. Her name is Elise. We've been married for 7 years. On paper, we're perfect. She's a nurse, compassionate, dependable, always exhausted. I'm a software engineer, quiet, methodical, always drifting. We share a mortgage, a calendar, and a queen-sized bed. What we no longer share is much harder to name. Lately, when Elise speaks, it feels like background noise. Not because she isn't worth listening to, but because I've already heard it all. Every shift, every patient, every moment of her day spilled across the dinner table like a medical report. I nod, smile, refill her wine. She doesn't ask about me anymore. I think we both know I wouldn't have much to say. Then came Darren. He was supposed to stay for just a few nights. An old college friend, newly single, looking for a soft place to land while transitioning between apartments. Elise was the one who suggested it. It'll be good for you to catch up, she'd said. You never talk to anyone. I hadn't seen Darren in over a decade. Back then, he was loud, reckless, magnetic. The kind of guy who turned heads when he walked into a room, and knew it. Now, he was quieter. Still handsome, but in a worn-in way. A little more beard, a little less arrogance. He had grown into himself. I, on the other hand, wasn't sure I'd ever started. The first night he arrived, we sat on the back porch with a couple beers, the air thick with old memories and unspoken things. We laughed about stupid college stunts. We talked about our jobs, our disappointments. Elise went to bed early shifts, always, and by midnight it was just me and Darren, quiet, close. I never thought you'd marry a woman, he said, not unkindly. I stared into my bottle. Neither did I. There was no judgment in his eyes. Just the kind of silence that understands too much. Over the next few days, Darren made himself comfortable. Not in an overbearing way. He did the dishes, cooked breakfast, even folded laundry, but in a way that filled a space I hadn't realized was empty. He asked questions Elise had stopped asking. He listened. He looked at me like I was still becoming something, not just fading into who I was supposed to be. One night, I caught him watching me. I was pouring a glass of water in the kitchen. Simple, nothing dramatic. But I looked up, and there he was, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "What?" I asked, my voice low. "Nothing," he said. "Just, you look different." "Different how?" "Like you're trying not to disappear." I didn't know what to say to that. Maybe because he was right. That same night, Elise kissed me goodnight with a distracted peck and went to bed without another word. I stayed up with Darren, watching a movie we weren't really watching. At some point, our knees touched. Neither of us moved. I felt something flicker. Not just attraction, though yes, that too, but recognition. Like my body remembered something my life had tried to forget. When the movie ended, neither of us stood up. Instead, we talked. About loneliness. About marriage. About men. Darren said, "Do you ever wonder how much of your life is yours, and how much was decided for you?" "All the time," I whispered. That night, I lay in bed beside Elise, who slept soundly. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. I watched the ceiling and felt a storm in my chest. Guilt. Longing. Fear. Hope. It was all tangled up and pulsing under my skin like electricity. The next day, I found myself noticing things I shouldn't. The way Darren stretched in the morning, shirtless and half asleep. The curve of his neck when he bent over his laptop. The sound of his laugh from the next room, real, warm, unfiltered. It was everything I hadn't felt in years. And it terrified me. Elise didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't want to. At dinner, she talked about her patients again. One of them had coded on the table. She described it clinically, with the detached professionalism she wore like armor. I watched her mouth move and wondered if she still saw me at all. Darren excused himself early that night. Said he had work to catch up on. Elise kissed my cheek and went to bed, not even looking up from her phone. I stayed in the living room alone. Or tried to. Around midnight, I heard footsteps. Soft. Intentional. I felt the weight shift on the bed. Familiar. Warm. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't speak. I just let it happen. For a moment, I convinced myself it was Elise. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I didn't open my eyes when the bed dipped. I wanted to believe it was Elise, that she had woken in the middle of the night, overcome by some tender memory or sudden desire. That she'd remembered we used to reach for each other in the dark without needing a reason. But the hand that found my side was not Elise's. It was heavier, rougher, slower, and I didn't move. My breath caught in my throat, waiting for what, I don't know. A word, a warning, a reason to stop. But all I felt was the silence stretching between us, thick with something we hadn't dared name until now. "Are you awake?" Darren's voice was barely a whisper. I turned to face him. Our eyes locked. There was no apology in his face, no regret. Just heat, hesitation, and something deeper, recognition. Like we were two people who had finally arrived at a destination we'd been denying for far too long. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "You are," I answered. And that was the truth. He didn't kiss me right away. He waited, long enough for me to say no. Long enough for me to pull back. I didn't. I couldn't. Something in me had already decided. When his lips finally met mine, it wasn't frantic or desperate. It was slow. Sure. Like he knew exactly what I needed, even if I didn't. My entire body responded before my mind had a chance to argue. Years of restraint, of pretending, of performing, gone. Just like that. I'd spent a decade building a life on rules. Rules that made me a husband, a provider, a man who had done the right thing. But in that moment those rules felt like a cage. And Darren was the key I didn't know I was holding. His hand slid behind my neck. My fingers gripped his back. Our bodies moved without planning, without permission, as if some unspoken truth had finally been set free. And it wasn't just sex. It was release. It was permission. It was home. When it was over, we didn't speak. We just lay there, bare skin against bare skin, breathing in the dark. The room smelled like sweat and salt and something irreversible. "I thought it was Elise," I said finally, the words catching in my throat. Darren laughed quietly, not mocking, just sad. "No, you didn't." He was right. I hadn't. Not really. We fell asleep like that, entangled, silent, exhausted. For the first time in years, I didn't dream. The next morning, I woke up alone. Darren was gone. The sheets beside me were cold. The scent of him lingered faintly in the room, a ghost of the night before. I got up, walked to the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like someone who'd just cheated. I didn't look evil, or broken, or even particularly different. I looked like someone who had finally told the truth, with his body, if not yet with his words. Downstairs, Elise was sipping coffee, scrolling through her phone like any other morning. "You sleep okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. "You?" She shrugged. "Had a weird dream. I thought I heard someone in the hallway." I froze. She didn't look up. Just kept scrolling. Darren walked in a minute later, fully dressed, clean-shaven, smiling like nothing had happened. If he felt anything, guilt, panic, desire, he hid it better than I did. "Morning," he said, too casually. Elise smiled. "You're up early." "Didn't sleep great," he said, meeting my eyes for the briefest second. "Figured I'd get started on some job apps." I nodded, numb. I could still feel him on my skin. Elise kissed my cheek before heading out the door. She smelled like vanilla and familiarity. When she was gone, Darren stayed quiet. He poured himself coffee, leaning against the counter. "I shouldn't have come into your room," he said. "You think I didn't want you to?" "That's not the point." "Then what is?" He looked at me, really looked at me. "What happens now?" I didn't have an answer. I had never even asked the question. We spent the day pretending. Small talk. Separate spaces. It was almost worse than the silence. Every time I passed him, my body remembered. My heart did too. But my mind was already at war. This wasn't just a secret. It was a decision. One that couldn't be undone. That night, Elise went to bed early again. Said her feet hurt. Said work had been hell. I told her I'd be up in a bit. She kissed my forehead. She didn't notice the flinch. Darren stayed in the guest room. I stayed on the couch. I didn't trust myself not to go to him again. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to. And that terrified me more than anything. Darren left on a Sunday. He didn't say goodbye in front of Elise. He packed early, quietly. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the gentle zip of his bag, the front door opening, then closing. No slam. No dramatic final glance. Just silence. He was gone by the time I came down. Elise was in the kitchen, brewing coffee. The sunlight through the window lit her face like a painting, soft, still, untouchable. For a moment, I didn't know how to speak to her. She turned to me. "You didn't say goodbye." I swallowed. No. She didn't ask why. I think she was done asking questions she didn't want the answers to. The days after Darren left moved slowly, like walking through water. The house felt too quiet, too clean. Elise and I circled each other with polite detachment, husband and wife in name only. We still shared meals, split chores, went through motions. But everything felt secondhand. Worn out. The air between us held something unspoken, and we both knew it would stay that way until one of us lit the match. She did it on a Wednesday night. We were folding laundry in silence when she said, "Are you in love with him?" The question came flat, not sharp. No accusation. Just a fact waiting to be confirmed. I froze, a towel still in my hands. "I don't know," I said. She nodded. "But you felt something." "Yes." She folded another shirt, methodical, careful. "Was it the first time?" I didn't lie. "Yes. The first time I let myself." She paused. "And me? Have you been lying this whole time?" "No," I said too quickly. Then again, quieter. "No. I did love you. I still do. Just not the way you deserve." That was when the tears came, not hers, but mine. Elise didn't cry. She just looked at me with something harder than anger. Not hate. Not betrayal. Resignation. "Do you even know what you want?" she asked. I didn't. I wanted to go back. I wanted to go forward. I wanted Darren. I wanted Elise. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be understood. I wanted peace. I wanted to not feel like I was breaking everything I touched. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She nodded. "You should be." And that was it. No screaming. No melodrama. Just truth laid bare in the middle of a beige living room, between piles of clean clothes and years of quiet compromise. We didn't separate right away. Elise asked for time. I gave it. We slept in the same bed but might as well have been on opposite continents. I stopped trying to touch her. She stopped pretending to need me. And still we stayed. Until one night, over takeout containers and half-watched television, she looked at me and said, "I think we're done." I nodded. "I know." And we both exhaled. Not relief. Not sadness. Just the end. I moved into a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom. No yard. A second-hand couch. For the first time in years, I woke up to silence that belonged only to me. I reached out to Darren once. A text. I left her. He didn't respond right away. 3 days passed before I saw the typing bubble. Then it disappeared. Then it returned. His reply came at 2:17 a.m. "I'm glad you were honest. But I'm not something you just circle back to." I stared at the screen until the battery died. And maybe I deserved that. Maybe I deserved the solitude. But I also deserved the truth. And I finally had it. I was not straight. I was not content. I was not fulfilled by a life built on safety. I was messy, conflicted, real. And I was finally free. Sometimes I wonder what Darren's doing. If he found someone who didn't need a breakdown to choose him. Someone brave from the start. Sometimes I wonder if Elise feels lighter. If she's seeing someone who makes her laugh again. Someone who listens. We don't talk much anymore. A few emails about final paperwork. One awkward phone call about the dog we never had. But I think we both know we did what had to be done. Not because we stopped loving each other, but because we finally loved ourselves enough to let go. There are nights I still think about that moment, when Darren's hand found my side in the dark, and I didn't pull away. Not because I regret it, but because it woke me up. And once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep. Guilt has a strange shape. It doesn't punch you in the gut or scream in your ear. It lingers, like fog in your lungs, like something just out of reach that you can't quite name but feel everywhere. I hadn't touched Darren since that night. Not even a brush of fingers. But the space between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we hadn't said. At breakfast, Elise chatted about needing to pick up dry cleaning and how her manager was, finally, retiring. I nodded, smiled at the right moments, even kissed her forehead when she left. But her warmth felt borrowed now, like wearing someone else's coat. It fit, but it wasn't mine. Darren stayed in his room most of the morning. I avoided it like a crime scene. By mid-afternoon, I found him on the porch, shirtless, cigarette dangling from his lips, something he hadn't done since college. A quiet rebellion. Maybe a signal. "You okay?" I asked, standing in the doorway. He didn't look at me. "Are you?" I walked out, sat beside him. Close enough to smell the smoke and the salt of his skin. Far enough to keep from reaching for him. "I haven't told her," I said. "No shit," he muttered, blowing a lazy cloud toward the fading sky. "I don't know how." "You don't know if," he corrected. He wasn't wrong. This wasn't about an affair anymore. This was about me. About the parts of myself I had stuffed into boxes and buried under years of routine, expectation, and fear. Darren had cracked one open, and now the contents were spilling everywhere. "You were married to her before you ever touched me," Darren said, softer this time. "But you were lying to yourself long before that." I wanted to argue. Instead, I asked, "Do you regret it?" His eyes met mine, steady, sure, sad. "No. But I regret being your secret." That hit harder than I expected. Because he wasn't just my mistake. He was my truth. A truth I had hidden behind Elise's smile, and a ring I wore out of duty more than love. That night, I tried. I tried to hold Elise's hand during dinner. I tried to ask about her day like I meant it. I tried to touch her in bed. But she pulled away. She didn't say anything, just turned her back and curled into herself like a question left unanswered. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she felt it too, the crack widening. The air between us turning colder with every breath. The next morning, Darren told us he'd found a place to stay. Said he'd be gone by the weekend. Elise smiled politely. "You'll have to come back for dinner once you're settled." He nodded. "Sure." But his eyes were on me. And mine were already mourning something I wasn't ready to name. That night, after Elise went to bed, I knocked on Darren's door. He opened it. Barefoot. Quiet. Tired. "I'm sorry," I said. "For which part?" "For everything." He shook his head. "You don't need to apologize for feeling something real. Just for pretending it didn't matter." I stepped inside. Closed the door behind me. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. We just stood there, breathing the same air, drowning in the things we'd never said. "I think I'm in love with you," I whispered. He laughed, soft, sad, beautiful. "No, you're not. You're in love with the version of yourself you get to be around me." I didn't argue. Because maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't know what love was anymore. Not really. All I knew was that when he looked at me, I saw the version of myself I'd spent years trying to bury. The boy who had once kissed his best friend in a dorm room and cried afterward. The man who had convinced himself that marrying a woman would make the feelings go away. The husband who'd mastered the art of pretending. Darren made that version of me impossible to ignore. "I can't keep doing this," he said, voice breaking. I won't be the shadow in your life. I want to be someone's choice, not their escape. Then, he touched my cheek. Just once. I hope you find the courage to be honest. With her. With yourself. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't ask me to go. He just closed the door behind me. When I got into bed that night, Elise stirred. You okay? She asked, her voice groggy. I don't know, I admitted. She turned to face me. Is something going on? That was the moment. The doorway. The edge of the cliff. I could lie. Say I was just tired. Blame stress, work, anxiety, any number of safe, rehearsed excuses. Or I could fall. I looked at her. Really looked. The woman I had promised everything to. The woman who deserved so much more than the half-truths I had built our life on. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. I'm just tired, I whispered. She didn't press. She just nodded and turned away again. But I saw it. In her eyes. In the way her shoulders tensed. She already knew. And the silence that followed was louder than any confession.